This story is a work of dark fiction and psychological horror. While it draws upon real scientific concepts, historical records, and folklore, all characters, events, and settings are entirely fictional. Any resemblance to actual individuals, living or dead, or real-life incidents is purely coincidental. This story may contain disturbing themes including mental illness, unexplained phenomena, violence, and supernatural elements not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is strongly advised. The intention is not to promote fear, but to explore the unknown through the lens of storytelling. Proceed only if you are prepared to walk the thin line between science and the unexplainable. She arrived at dusk, just as the sun slipped behind the trees, bleeding orange into the skies of a sleepy rural town in Vermont. The orphanage gates creaked as a chill swept through the grounds, the kind of cold that makes your bones ache even in summer. It was July 6, 1972. There she was, standing barefoot on the gravel road, wearing a torn gray dress soaked at the hem. She couldn't have been older than 8. Her face was pale, eerily calm. Her lips were sealed shut, not by choice, but by something deeper, a silence that felt unnatural. Her hair clung to her cheeks, damp with sweat or perhaps tears. No name, no note, just a strange pendant around her neck made of stone too smooth to be carved by hand. Mrs. Patterson, the head caretaker, hesitated before opening the gate. The girl didn't flinch, didn't speak, just stared. "Where are your parents, child?" she asked gently. No response. Mrs. Patterson knelt to inspect her. There were scratches across her arms, as if she'd run through thorny bushes. But the strangest thing? Her pupils. They weren't dilated, despite the dim light. They looked reflective, like black mirrors. The police were called. Officers came. Photos were taken. She was entered into the system under the name Jane Doe. No one came forward. No missing child report matched. Not in Vermont. Not in the entire country. She was given a bed in the east wing of the orphanage, a room with 2 other girls, Anna and Lillian. That first night, Anna screamed in her sleep. She said the girl stood over her bed for hours, eyes wide open, just staring. No blinking, no breathing sound, just silence. Lillian wet the bed for the first time in years. The next morning, she begged to be moved to another room. Rumors spread quickly. The other children called her the Watcher. Some said they heard her whispering to the walls. Others swore they saw shadows move behind her, even in well-lit rooms. A few kids developed nosebleeds after spending too long near her. One boy had a seizure after she brushed past him in the hallway. The staff dismissed it all as coincidence. But Mrs. Patterson couldn't ignore the fact that all her clocks had stopped working since the girl arrived. The hour hands twitched but never moved, and her cat, usually affectionate, hissed violently and fled the house completely. Medical staff came and examined her. No physical trauma, no sign of abuse, no fever. Her pulse was slow but stable. However, her EEG scans showed no typical brainwave activity. It was static, pure noise, like a broken radio. Even worse, the girl wouldn't eat. Not bread, not fruits, not even milk. Yet she never lost weight. She just sat at the table during meals, staring into her plate as if waiting for something to appear. 2 weeks passed. Then came the dreams. Multiple caretakers began reporting identical nightmares. A girl standing in a black forest, surrounded by whispering trees that bled red sap. She would speak in the dreams, but in a voice that echoed inside their skulls, never through the air. By the end of July, the orphanage had lost 3 staff members. One quit without notice. Another went missing during her night shift, last seen walking down the hall toward the east wing. Her shoes were found at the foot of the stairs the next morning. The third was found rocking back and forth in the pantry, eyes wide, mumbling something about the girl who sees what should not be seen. An emergency board meeting was held. Doctors were called in again. One pediatric psychiatrist flew in from Boston, promising answers. He left 3 hours later. No explanation. Just said, "That's not a child. That's something else." He retired the next week. By mid-August, Jane Doe was isolated from the others. She was moved to the attic bedroom, which had thick stone walls and no mirrors. A camera was placed in her room to monitor her overnight. On the third night, the camera went dead at exactly 3:33 a.m. When the footage was reviewed, the last image showed her sitting on the bed. The next frame, before the static, revealed a figure standing behind her, tall, thin, made of shadow. There was no one else in the house, and yet the girl never cried, never laughed, never asked for anything. She existed like an object, quiet, motionless, absorbing everything around her. No fingerprints, no known DNA match, no birth records. Science couldn't explain her, and deep down, even the bravest among them didn't want to try. By September 1972, the girl was no longer referred to as Jane Doe. Within internal reports, researchers began calling her Subject E1037, E for entity, 1037 for the case number, though unofficially, some called her Echo. Her presence had caught the attention of the Department of Unexplained Phenomena, a secretive division within the U.S. government tasked with investigating anomalies that defied conventional science. The orphanage was quietly emptied under the pretense of structural damage, and the girl was transferred at night to a secure underground facility on the outskirts of Vermont. The room she was placed in was a sterile, white chamber, surveillance on all sides, no reflective surfaces, no personal items. Still, she sat as she always had, hands on her lap, gaze unwavering, as if she were studying the scientists more than they were studying her. Test 001. Auditory response. A series of high and low frequency sounds were played through hidden speakers. The girl's expression never changed. However, on the 17th frequency, one only dogs are known to hear, every power outlet in the facility burst in a flash of blue light. Security footage showed her lips twitch. Not a smile, not a word, just movement. The scientists noted this as inconclusive. But 2 technicians refused to return to the lab after that test. One of them later died in a car crash. Witnesses said he drove straight into a lake, as if he didn't see it was there. Test 012. Physical boundaries. A pressure-sensitive glass enclosure was built to test her strength and reaction to confined spaces. Over 36 hours, she did not move once. Then, on hour 37, without warning, the sensors failed. Security rushed in. The glass was unbroken, but she was standing outside the enclosure. When asked how she got out, she simply tilted her head. Cameras showed no movement. One frame she was inside. The next she was out. The glass was analyzed. No cracks, no warp, no entry point. Still, after that day, no one dared to leave her unattended. Test 026. Nutrition and metabolism. She hadn't eaten in months, yet showed no signs of malnourishment. They offered her everything: synthetic formulas, nutrient injections, even raw meat. She refused all. Then, a behavioral specialist offered her a dead crow. Not out of cruelty, but out of desperation. The bird had struck the facility's fence the night before. The moment the specialist entered the room with the bird in hand, his nose began to bleed. His left eye turned red. And then the girl smiled for the first time. A brief, crooked smile. The bird was gone the next moment. No feathers, no blood, no bones. Only the pendant around her neck began to glow faintly, just once. The specialist was found later writing circles in the walls of his quarters. Circles within circles. No beginning, no end. Test 032. Brain scans. The neurologists tried again. This time with advanced imaging, experimental at the time. But the equipment wouldn't work in her presence. When they scanned her from afar using directional magnetic fields, they discovered something terrifying. She had no brain activity, no hemispheric division, no cortical movement, no measurable electricity. Her skull was full, completely full of dense black tissue, unlike anything found in human anatomy. It didn't pulse. It didn't breathe. It just existed. One researcher joked, "We're not looking at a mind. We're looking at a memory." That same researcher disappeared 3 days later. His shoes were found at the base of the radio tower. His body was never recovered. Test 038. Social integration. They brought in another child, an empathic boy named David, raised in sensory isolation for government experiments. The idea was to let two anomalies interact. David entered the room, hesitant but curious. For 15 minutes he said nothing. Neither did she. Then he began crying. Not a whimper, not out of pain. He wept as if he'd seen something unbearable. When they pulled him out, his heartbeat had slowed to a near-death rhythm. His final words before slipping into a coma were, "She's not one. She's all of them." David never woke again. By the end of 1973, the facility was put into lockdown. Too many events had occurred. Lab notes began to include drawings, strange symbols resembling ancient runes. Researchers were starting to see the same things in their dreams. A circular structure, a tree with black leaves, eyes without faces, all tied to the girl. But perhaps the most terrifying finding came from a geneticist named Dr. Mari Thompson. She conducted a full genome analysis. Results came back unreadable. But hidden in the raw data, there was a sequence of numbers repeating endlessly. 6-0-3-3-3-6. The same pattern showed up in her own blood sample the next week. Then in the samples of others who worked closely with the girl. Something was changing them. From the inside out, they tried to move her to another facility. A helicopter was arranged. It never reached its destination. Radar lost contact over the mountains. When search teams arrived, they found the wreckage, but no bodies. The girl was back in her room that night. No one had brought her. By 1974, most scientists had either quit, been reassigned, or vanished. Only a small group remained. Obsessed, frightened, entranced. They no longer called her Echo. They called her the Singularity. The facility, once full of sterile order and scientific rigor, began to change. First, it was the walls. White paint peeled overnight in the east wing where the girl was kept, revealing markings beneath. Ancient runes no one remembered painting, symbols resembling those seen in the researchers' dreams. They tried to sand them down, repaint them, but the symbols returned every night clearer, more defined, and somehow alive. Security guards reported hearing footsteps in empty corridors. Metal doors locked themselves. Light bulbs burst if the girl looked directly at them. Entire hallways fell dark even during the day. The whispers began next. Soft at first. A murmur. You could only hear them if you stood near her room. But eventually they followed staff down the halls, into the cafeteria, the showers, even their homes. Always in an ancient dialect. Always saying the same thing. She remembers what we forgot. Incident log. Night 14, February 1974, a janitor named Gregor Weems stayed late to clean the lower level. At 2:47 a.m., he radioed in, whispering frantically, "There's a girl in the hallway. Not the one in containment. She's walking backward." The radio went dead. They found Gregor later in the fetal position inside the utility closet. His eyes were wide open, his jaw locked. He had bitten off part of his tongue. There was no girl in the footage, just his shadow, and another moving in reverse, mirroring his every motion. The staff started quitting, or disappearing. One head nurse, Miriam Rose, began speaking in riddles, drawing complex equations on the cafeteria walls in charcoal, most of which referenced time loops, entropy inversion, and nonlinear consciousness. She vanished 2 days later during a facility-wide blackout. Her clothes were left behind, folded neatly in the center of her bed. And in the hallway outside her room, the air was cold, bitter cold. Every metal surface was rusted, as if aged 100 years overnight. The whispers weren't always in words. Sometimes they were sounds. A baby crying softly, footsteps pacing slowly behind your ear, deep guttural moans that rumbled through the air vents. Sometimes it was music, an off-tune lullaby with no identifiable source. Sleep became a rare commodity. Those who managed to rest were plagued by the same dream. A tree, massive and black, rooted in a desert of bones. Hanging from its branches were dolls, faceless, hollow. And at the base of the tree, the girl knelt, whispering to something buried in the sand. When the dreamers awoke, they found sand in their shoes. One security officer, Carl Evans, began investigating the East Wing on his own. He set up motion sensors, thermal cameras, and vibration detectors. But the data didn't make sense. Sometimes the sensors would trigger but nothing appeared. Other times, the girl would seem to vanish entirely, zero thermal presence. Just a black void, colder than the surrounding air by 15 degrees. He tried to leave the project. His car caught fire as he turned the ignition. He survived, but his speech never returned. His throat was intact, no burns, no trauma. Just silence, as if something had reached inside him and switched off a part of him permanently. By April 1974, the whispers grew louder. Visitors who came to inspect the project, government agents, officials, skeptics, often left within minutes. One high-ranking officer vomited the moment he crossed the threshold into the East Wing. His shoes melted slightly on the tile. No explanation. Another visitor reportedly fainted upon making eye contact with the girl. He woke up hours later repeating the same phrase, "She's waiting beneath the silence." One incident finally made the government take notice. The Lillian tape, a surviving caretaker from the original orphanage, Lillian, now 16, agreed to speak to the scientists. She arrived shaking, still terrified years later. "I saw her dream," she whispered. "It wasn't mine. It was hers. She puts her thoughts in you, and not through words, through feelings, through images." She agreed to a recorded session under light hypnosis. The recording, nicknamed the Lillian tape, was locked in the archives under maximum clearance. But unofficial transcripts leaked. According to the logs, Lillian began speaking in reverse speech, perfect reverse phonetics. When the audio was flipped and translated, it revealed this: "The halls are not halls. They are veins. She walks inside us. She has no origin, no future, only now. She is not the beginning. She is the interruption." Then her voice deepened unnaturally. Not like a child, not like a human. The lights flickered. The audio distorted. She screamed once and then fell unconscious. When she woke, she had no memory of the session. But for 3 days afterward, she refused to drink water. Said it smelled like the lake where the sky drowns. She went missing 2 weeks later. All that was found in her home was a mirror cracked down the middle, and a single word written in dust: "Return." The whispers were no longer contained to the facility. One scientist reported hearing the girls humming over the phone. Another claimed her daughter began drawing the same circular runes in her coloring books, despite never seeing them. It was spreading. Something was waking, something inside her or behind her. And she remained silent. But on one particular night, she stood at her door and spoke for the first time. One sentence. No one was near, but the microphones picked it up. A whisper, delicate, almost kind. "We were never meant to be remembered." They said there was nothing in the archives. No record of the girl before 1972. No matching fingerprints. No dental records. No DNA entries. But Dr. Evelyn Morrow didn't believe in missing data. She believed in buried data. She had worked as a forensic researcher for the Department of Defense for over a decade before being assigned to the E-1037 case. Her specialty: pattern recovery in erased or redacted government archives. And in October 1974, Evelyn found something. Not in the federal records. Not in the orphanage logs. But in a locked drawer behind a false wall in the facility's library, buried beneath decades of dust. A file marked Project Seraphim Status. Terminated, classified Level 9 access, only year 1889. Inside the folder were 5 photographs, all black and white, all showing the same girl. Same pale face, same long, dark hair, same pendant. The first image was dated 1889, taken outside a hospital in Prague. The second, 1524, drawn in ink, an illustration from a journal belonging to a Spanish monk, who called her La Hija del Olvido, the daughter of forgetting. One photo had no date, only a caption. Found in Iceland. No heartbeat, no aging, language unknown. Witnessed the burning of 3 sons. Evelyn's hands trembled as she turned to the final page. A blood-stained letter written in German. The handwriting was frantic. She was not born. She was returned. She brings the memory of something older than Earth. Do not awaken her. If she speaks, the echo begins again. Evelyn scanned the folder into the system and ran an image analysis. It confirmed the impossible. The girl in all images was the same age. Same facial proportions. Not a single biological change across centuries. The software flagged one term repeatedly from scattered documents in Project Seraphim. The one who remembers. She took her findings to the head of operations, Dr. Royslevon. He dismissed her. Coincidence, he said. Folklore. Pareidolia. But Evelyn had already gone further. She had contacted a linguist at the University of Warsaw. The runes appearing on the walls matched symbols from a long-lost language, an undocumented dialect older than Sumerian. The translation was imperfect, but one phrase kept appearing. The cycle must break. Memory is the enemy. When Evelyn returned to the facility that night, she found her office cleared out. Her security pass revoked. She was fired. 2 days later, she was reported missing. Her apartment was undisturbed, except for her bathroom mirror, where a single word was carved into the glass from the inside. Repeat. Back at the facility, paranoia grew. Every attempt to suppress the findings failed. More documents surfaced. One handwritten letter, dated 987 AD, came from a monastery in Norway, referencing a child of lightless birth who had walked out of a burning forest. They sealed her in stone, but earthquakes struck 3 times over the next week. When they opened the seal, she was gone. And on the walls inside, the same circular runes, the same pendant carved into the stone. Some researchers began theorizing the girl wasn't a person, but a fixed event in time. A point that couldn't be erased, only re-experienced. Not a traveler, not a creature, but a memory loop of a cosmic event humanity was never meant to understand. A quantum anthropologist named Dr. Nguyen wrote, "She is not here to teach us. She is here because we forgot something we were never meant to forget." He took his own life the following month. He had carved her face, perfectly, into the wooden walls of his office. Hundreds of times, each identical. The whispers in the facility grew unbearable. One night, the east wing was sealed entirely. The cameras showed a black fog rolling down the corridor toward the girl's room. Inside her cell, she stood up, arms extended, and whispered in a language no one could identify. The footage ended there. When power was restored, the entire east wing had aged by 60 years overnight. Rust, decay, mold. And in the girl's room, vines with black leaves had grown from the cracks in the walls, wrapping the bed frame, reaching toward the ceiling. But the girl was gone. They found her in the center of the library, standing beside Evelyn's old chair, waiting. A note was found tucked inside one of the Project Seraphim documents. "You buried me in history, but I am not history. I am the interruption between the ages." By early 1975, whispers of the girl had spread through every intelligence agency in the Western Hemisphere. A Vatican historian contacted the facility. He claimed a figure matching the girl's description appeared in the Dead Sea Scrolls, referred to only as the fifth veil. A fragment read, "And from the ash she will return, for she is the scream buried in silence. Not angel, not demon, but memory given shape." He begged them to stop studying her. He was denied. He died 3 days later in a fire. The fire started in the shape of a spiral. The deeper they dug, the more they learned one terrifying truth. She had been here before, again and again, across centuries, across continents, and each time something vanished. A village, a town, a monastery, a family line, culture, as if her presence was not a visitation, but a cleansing, a way to wipe clean whatever humanity had built, not out of hatred, but out of necessity. In one final memo before the project was shut down, an unnamed agent wrote, "She is the forgotten emergency measure of a forgotten civilization. We are the infection. She is the reset button." In March of 1975, the girl was transferred. The official reason? Security instability. The real reason? They were afraid she was contaminating the facility, not biologically but metaphysically. Project leads chose a remote, forgotten town in northern Maine. Darlane, population 143. A town so small it wasn't on most maps. A town where the government could move quietly, where containment wouldn't raise questions. A heavily armed convoy transported her under the cover of dense fog. No radio contact, no outside interference. She never blinked the entire 6-hour journey. She just stared at the trees, and the trees bent in the direction of her gaze. Darlane welcomed her like a ghost. Locals were told she was a trauma victim under state custody. She was kept in a converted church at the edge of the town, its windows blacked out, a ring of floodlights surrounding the perimeter. Within 48 hours of her arrival, the following occurred. All clocks in Darlane stopped at exactly 3:33 a.m. Dogs refused to go outside. Cats ran away entirely. The town's only priest, Father Allen, burned all his Bibles and went silent. He was later found staring at the sun without blinking, whispering, "She's not coming. She's always been here." By day 4, the fog stopped lifting. It settled over Darlane like a second skin, muffling voices, distorting lights, creating silhouettes where no one stood. The townspeople grew paranoid. Some claimed to hear a child's voice in their walls. Others said they dreamt of drowning in a sky filled with eyes. One man tried to leave with his family. Their car was found wrapped around a tree, melted, not crashed. No bodies were recovered. Only their shadows remained on the road, burned into the pavement. The government shut down all roads leading into Darlane. They claimed it was due to a contagious fungal outbreak. It wasn't. Satellite imagery showed anomalies above the town. Glitching clouds, static bands, an eerie distortion that warped light as if space itself was unraveling. Civilians who passed near the border experienced nosebleeds, lost time, or temporary blindness. The town was forgotten, erased quietly, removed from public maps. Its mail rerouted. Its name wiped from databases. Its birth and death records locked under Federal Code Black Echo 06. Inside Darlane, things worsened. The soil turned gray. Crops died overnight. Radio waves reversed. Children forgot their parents' names, and in some cases, their own. By week 3, the people of Darlane began disappearing. Not violently, not messily. They simply faded. One moment they were in the diner. The next, just an empty booth. Food still warm. Coffee steaming. The waitress screamed the first time it happened. The second time, she didn't react. She just sat down and waited for her turn. Dr. Royslevon, the project lead, refused to leave. He insisted they were on the verge of understanding the memory field. He believed the girl was a manifestation of a temporal rupture, a point in time that collected lost realities like gravity collects stars. He wrote in his journal, "Darlane is not breaking. It is remembering. It is replaying what we forgot. We are inside her now, not the other way around." The next morning, he was found on the church rooftop, drawing constellations in chalk. Constellations that hadn't been seen in Earth's sky for over 11,000 years. At 3:33 a.m. on April 4, 1975, all signals from Darlane stopped. Cameras, radios, satellites, gone. A recon drone was dispatched, passed over what used to be Darlane, and found nothing. No buildings, no roads, no church, no trees, just a crater 3 miles wide. At the center, a single standing figure, the girl, arms at her side, head tilted upward, eyes glowing faintly with violet light. When recovery teams arrived, they couldn't enter. Every machine failed within 2 miles of the crater. Every attempt to reach her ended in silence. Geologists reported that the crater didn't exist on any tectonic fault line. Physicists found trace readings of tachyon particles, theoretical particles that travel backward through time. The soil around the crater was dated to be older than the Earth itself. When samples were taken and tested in labs across the country, the same message appeared under electron scanning. This is not the first time. In Washington, D.C., a secret meeting was held between top scientists, defense strategists, and religious leaders. The proposal was clear: eradicate the anomaly, seal her permanently, no further contact. But when they returned to the site, she was gone. The next day, a woman in Italy reported a strange girl standing silently outside her daughter's window. A farmer in Argentina claimed a child wandered into his barn and vanished in front of him, leaving only a stone pendant behind. A lighthouse keeper in Japan turned in a photo of a girl who appeared in his logs for 3 nights straight, despite the island being uninhabited for over 40 years. The image showed her smiling. Same eyes, same face, same girl. Darlene never returned. Even the name faded from memory. Ask any cartographer. Ask any postal worker. They'll tell you, there is no town called Darlene. And they believe that, because she made them believe it. He was once considered a genius. Dr. Lawrence Bell, theoretical physicist, author of 5 peer-reviewed papers on multidimensional perception, Harvard Fellow, lead contributor to the U.S. Department of Anomalous Research. But after Darlene vanished in 1975, so did he. For 9 months, he dropped off the grid. No contact, no lab reports. His family reported him missing. His colleagues assumed he had either been silenced or taken. Then, on January 8, 1976, he reappeared. Not in a lab, not at a hospital, but barefoot, in a snowstorm, outside a gas station in rural Wyoming. He was 91 pounds, half-blind, and covered in spiral-shaped burn scars across his chest and arms. His fingernails were missing. His voice, barely above a whisper, repeated the same sentence. She is the end of thought. When the police took him in, they assumed he was just another drifter. But fingerprint analysis confirmed Lawrence Bell, age 44, except he looked 90. His hair was pure white, his spine curved from decay, his skin translucent like old paper. He was taken to a psychiatric facility under heavy surveillance. That's when the drawings began. The journals of Dr. Bell, he refused to speak for the first 4 days. But every hour on the hour he requested a pen and paper. By the end of the week, he had filled 12 notebooks. Each page was covered in mathematical equations, cryptic timelines, and bizarre sketches. One recurring figure stood out. A girl with hollow eyes, arms raised, standing inside a collapsing sphere. Another sketch showed time itself unraveling like thread, being pulled through her hands. In the margins, he had written, "We tried to study the universe through logic. She reminded us that memory does not obey rules. She does not destroy the world. She erases the version of it that believes it knows everything. When she whispers, reality answers." His most famous diagram, now called the Bell spiral, was a looping equation that, when plotted, formed a recursive spiral infinitely folding into itself. It described memory as a gravitational force, one that doesn't store the past, but pulls it forward into the present. And at the center of the spiral, the word echo. Psychiatrists declared him legally insane. But a few scientists from the original E1037 team were secretly flown in to evaluate him. One of them, Dr. Haruto Kane, said, "He's not mad. He's remembering too much." Dr. Kane tried replicating Bell's calculations. But 3 weeks later, he suffered a seizure while drawing in his lab. On the walls, they found dozens of spirals, some smeared in blood. One note pinned to the whiteboard read, "She showed him before. He showed me after. I saw both." Bell continued writing, but he would pause sometimes, staring at the wall as if watching something walk behind it. Nurses noticed that clocks in his room moved backward. At 3:33 a.m., his shadow would vanish, leaving just the outline of his body on the floor. Once, a staff member asked him, "Who is she? Really?" Bell smiled, eyes sunken deep. "She is not one being. She is what remains when understanding dies. You think she came from somewhere. She didn't. She was always here. We just didn't see her until we tried to know everything. Then came the collapse. In April 1976, Bell requested to be placed in isolation. He said, "She's coming through the mirrors now. She wants to speak." They granted his request. His final words to the nurse, "If I don't return, bury my memory, not my body." That night, every mirror in the facility cracked. Security footage showed him standing at the center of his room. He reached out to nothing, and in one blink he was gone. No noise, no struggle, no trace, just his journals stacked neatly on the floor, and one final phrase carved into the wall. "She is the fracture. I am the echo." After his disappearance, all his notebooks were seized. Most were declared classified under Project Seraphim Reinstated. But 2 leaked pages ended up in the underground journal Dark Light Quarterly. One quote made waves across academic and occult circles. "She speaks not in language, but in certainty. She doesn't make you question reality. She replaces it. And when she finishes, you remember only her." Lawrence Bell was never found. No death certificate. No funeral. Just empty shoes in a locked room. And inside them, a folded paper that read, "We were never alone in time. We were alone in memory." The government closed the psychiatric facility 1 week later. And yet, strange reports continue to surface. Doctors waking up speaking in reverse. Researchers seeing spiral marks burned into their skin. Whispers at exactly 3:33 a.m. saying, "You are not the first." They thought she was gone. After the Darlene crater. After Dr. Bell. After the sealed documents, erased towns, vanished timelines. For nearly 2 years, there was silence. Then, May 3, 1978, a seismic anomaly registered in 4 different parts of the world simultaneously. Not an earthquake, not a blast, just a shift, a vibration in reality. In Buenos Aires, clock spun forward 7 hours before stopping. In a remote monastery in Tibet, all the monks fell into a deep sleep at the same moment. Upon waking, they had each carved the same spiral symbol into their wooden floors, without memory of doing so. And in the Arizona desert, an astronomer looking through his telescope at a cluster of stars saw her face, in the pattern of a collapsing nebula. It was that night the whispers returned. But now they weren't whispers. They were chants, spoken in unison by people across continents, in different languages, in the same voice. She is awake, back at the government's most secure vault, known only as Facility 0, Item E1037's pendant. The last physical evidence of her existence began to pulse. The stone glowed red, and then it cracked. From inside, light poured out, but not ordinary light. It bent the walls. It softened time. It made people remember things that never happened. Scientists collapsed, murmuring names of lost cities. One woman woke from a coma she'd been in for 6 years and said, "She's standing in the room. Don't turn around." But there was no one there. Not visibly. Not yet. Surveillance teams around the world were activated. Old files reopened. A new operation launched. Code. Event Echo. They believed they could predict her return. They were wrong, because she never left. She was only waiting. And then, at exactly 3:33 a.m. on June 6, 1978, she spoke again. Not in one place, but everywhere. Every recording device. Every phone. Every radio. Even televisions that were unplugged. Just a single word. In every tongue. Heard in every mind. Remember. Across the world, chaos erupted. People saw images in the sky. Memories not their own. Cities they'd never visited. Wars they never fought in. Births. Deaths. Extinctions. Some fell to their knees in worship. Others screamed. Others just walked into the sea. But in one facility in Greenland, hidden beneath the ice, an old researcher, now frail and nearly blind, whispered, "It's not a word, it's a trigger." Because after that day, things changed. Subtly at first. Time bent. People missed hours they couldn't explain. Children were born speaking forgotten languages. Identical strangers began appearing in different parts of the world. A woman in Moscow called her husband's name, and a man who had died 7 years ago answered her back, standing in the kitchen like he never left. And the girl? She began appearing in dreams. More vivid, more frequent. In each one, she was no longer silent. She was singing, a song in no known language, but one that made people cry upon waking, not from fear, but from a sense of loss, of something long forgotten. Astronomers noticed new constellations in the sky, patterns that had never existed. When they tried mapping them, the stars rearranged. One astrophysicist wrote, "The sky is remembering a different version of itself." And on June 9, 1978, an ancient shipwreck was discovered off the coast of Morocco. It wasn't wood. It wasn't metal. It was bone. Inside, preserved in salt and silence, a mural. A girl with hollow eyes, arms outstretched. Above her, carved in thousands of tiny runes. She comes not to destroy, but to remind the world of what it buried. By July, she began manifesting. In places with the highest memory collapse. Hospitals, graveyards, libraries, abandoned buildings, places where time sat still. She would appear for just a moment, always in the corner of your eye, always turning away, never walking, always arriving. A man in Cairo jumped from a building, leaving only a note. She showed me my real birthday. I was born when the earth first dreamed. A child in Sudan who had never seen a computer typed 3,000 lines of text in a dead language. When translated, it read, "She was the voice before the mouth was invented, the thought before the brain existed, the cry before birth. And then came the returning dead. Not zombies, not ghosts, but people who had died years earlier, now found alive, unchanged, confused. DNA confirmed their identity. One man reappeared after 32 years, asking for a newspaper from 1973. He read the headline, nodded, and simply said, 'It happened again.' Memory no longer worked the way it used to. People remembered things differently. Husbands and wives recalled different versions of their wedding day. History books rewrote themselves. Digital files changed. Statues appeared in towns that claimed they had always been there, though no one remembered them being built. And everywhere, that same symbol emerged again, the spiral, the echo. By August 1978, the truth became unavoidable. She wasn't just a girl. She was a convergence, a fold in reality, the point where memory and time and consciousness overlap into one living entity. She was the awareness of forgetting. And now that she had awakened fully, she would show the world what it had tried to erase, itself. August 13, 1978. The world stood still, not in silence, but in recognition. Birds stopped mid-flight, dogs howled at nothing, the oceans calmed. And all across the globe, on blackboards, sand, frost-covered windshields, and foggy mirrors, her symbol appeared, not drawn by human hands, but emerging, as if the world itself was writing something it had long forgotten. That night, a celestial event took place, one unseen in modern astronomy. 3 moons appeared in the sky. No explanation, no reflection. They pulsed with red light, then blue, then a deep violet. All eyes turned upward, and millions of people remembered something not from their past, but from something deeper, something older. A field of black grass, a sky that spoke, and a girl alone walking barefoot through shattered time. Then she came, not through gates, not through thunder, but through dreams. Every dream, every sleeping human that night saw her, some standing in fire, some under oceans, some on vast machines the size of cities, but always her, the same face, the same calm, the same impossible cosmic eyes. And in each dream, she whispered one truth. You were not the first. The governments collapsed first, not through violence but confusion. Laws began to rewrite themselves. Presidents forgot their names during live broadcasts. Wars stopped, not out of peace but because no one remembered what they were fighting for. Children born after that day were different. They could recite memories that predated human language. Some could see into people's pasts just by touching their skin. They called themselves the Remembered. One child, barely 4 years old, held up a mirror to his father and said, "This is not who you were before her." And the man dropped to his knees sobbing. He had never told anyone about the dreams. The dreams where he was someone else, on a world with 3 suns and no sky. Meanwhile, ancient structures reappeared. A pyramid beneath the Amazon jungle. A spiral-shaped temple beneath the ice of Antarctica. A city of bone rising from the depths of the Mariana Trench. Each one carried her mark. And inside each, murals, carvings, statues. All showing the same girl. The same spiral. The same message. She comes when the world lies to itself. Then came the final convergence. September 3rd, 1978. Exactly 3:33 a.m. Again. Every light on Earth blinked at once. And then she appeared. Not in one place, but everywhere. To every person. In every form. Not just in dreams. She stood beside them. Not as a threat, but as a mirror. People saw her in the faces of those they'd wronged. In the laughter of lost siblings. In the silence of dead parents. She was grief. She was truth. She was the memory of all choices made and unmade. In a live broadcast that no one remembered scheduling, she stood before a black void and spoke directly into the camera. She said, "You built time to escape what you are. You built death to forget what you've done. I did not come to punish. I came to help you remember." The screen flickered, and behind her the void split open, revealing Earth. Not this Earth. Another, older, broken, empty. The skies cracked. The seas inverted. The people erased. She said, "This was the last world. You were there. You forgot. So I became the fragment." The final revelation hit humanity not like a wave, but like a pulse. We were not the first intelligent species. Not the first to build. Not the first to break. We were a loop, a reoccurrence. And she, the girl, was the only piece that persisted. Not a being, but a memory virus. A living code. A sentient failsafe designed by those who came before us, meant to trigger when civilization crossed a point of no return. Not to end it, but to reset it. The spiral wasn't just a symbol. It was a cycle. And now it had turned. Again. Within days, entire cities fell silent. Not destroyed, just paused. People vanished quietly, peacefully. They weren't dead. They were returned. Reintegrated into whatever came before. A few stayed behind. To remember. To tell the stories. To warn the next world. In the ruins of Tokyo, an old woman carved words into the concrete with her fingernail. We were dreamers who forgot the cost of dreaming. She is the memory of that cost. The sky never returned to normal. The third moon still hangs there, watching, waiting. And every night at 3:33 a.m., if you listen closely, you'll hear her whisper in the wind, "Next time, do not forget me." 1.